go. Hi, everybody. Really nice to see you. Not nice to see you, just really nice to be here today. Everybody's alive. We're terra firma, this side of the dirt. Nice to be here. We got a busy show for you today. We're going to talk about Donald Trump, not in jail yet. We're going to talk about an insane rumor around Andrew Wiggins. So you'll love this. Like, I loved it, even though it's a sad story, but it's fucking unbelievable. Canadian NBA player Andrew Wiggins, first overall a few years ago, won a world championship, Golden State Warriors. We're going to talk about him today. We're going to talk about a bit of
an
Take Back Alberta.
Anti-masker.
Yeah,
Wiggins.
Hang on. Going to talk about Take Back Alberta. We got a guest coming on. I'm going to keep that a secret for the first couple minutes. We're going to bring him in like a rock star. Yeah, back to the Andrew Wiggins thing. Lachlan Cross joins us, 957 Cruise FM in Empton. Yeah.
Great basketball player.
Incredible. Incredible. The story around him, you and I were chatting about it last night, and we're not going to give away the details. Nightmare scenario.
Well,
or an incredible turn of luck.
I was going to say, you could look at this.
Yeah.
You could treat this as an opportunity, Dean.
I'm a glass half full guy, right? So if that happened to me, I'm not going to tell you what happened to Andrew Wiggins, but if what happened to Andrew Wiggins ever happened to me, which thank God it never has, and I have scientific proof, and I'm not telling you what happened to him yet. We'll tell you later in the show. I would look at it like, oh, what a fucking win.
I purposely didn't look at the pictures because I want to be surprised. You kind of hinted at it last night.
It's the best story of the year. It's the best story of the year, and everybody, I know I phoned you right before I was going to smoke a bowl and go to bed. Best story of the year, without question. Like, we're going to talk about Chinese interference into the election system and our institutions here in Canada. It's the biggest story in the world right now. China's all up in our election faces. We got this guy named Han Dong crying in the middle of the House of Commons yesterday. We got global news saying espionage everywhere. Meanwhile, they're not telling anybody where the espionage is coming from. So we got to, like, it's the biggest story in the world. And I'm like, I'm ready to just tube the story and not take back Alberta. You guys are almost beholden to a bunch of religious zealots. That's one of the biggest stories in Canada. We got a guest on. We're going to bring him in to talk about it. And I almost want to don't do any of that stuff. I kind of just want to talk about Andrew Wiggins' situation like all day long. But we can't.
Hey, save it.
It's that huge. How do you like that tease? It's old radio Dean coming out of me. Nice tease, hey? You like that? That's a tease. That's a hook. We're bringing people through to the end of the show.
Can I tell you a quick story?
It's not quick, but yes.
So Grant was doing that story about the member of parliament that's tied to the Chinese thing, and he was saying his name like Hong Dong. He was saying it like 30 times in the story.
Yeah,
throwing in caucus. What are we going to do if we don't have Dong in the caucus? And I couldn't. He did it all morning, and I can't believe how well he hung on to it, like pure exposure.
Yeah. Yeah, because the fellow who's under scrutiny, he's got an interesting name. His name's Han Dong. So he's one D away from the greatest name ever, by the way.
Grant was just going full on, just calling him Hung Dong, and just messing up his first name. So anyway, I was a young man, and I moved to Vancouver to pursue my radio dream back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Are we really starting with like a reflective story of you again after we just teed up this incredible show? You're going to start talking about you growing up in fucking BC again?
You can no listen to me. You're going to love this story.
We got Nate Pike standing by. I'm excited to bring him in from the break. Okay, can you make it in under 60 seconds? 90?
I can. So I moved to Vancouver. I get a job at the Pan Pacific Hotel doing evenings so that I can actually go to school during the day to go to radio school.
Yes.
I go to work my first day. I get my uniform. I go into the dressing room. I put it on. It's this nice little jacket, and they give you everything except shoes. And I got to go up to the third or fourth floor to the room service.
28 seconds.
The room service department. And I'm in the elevator, and I'm like checking to make sure my pants, and I look up, and I got 3 guys that are all very much shorter than me. And I look at their name tags. One is Hung, Dong, and Wang.
That's not true.
I'm telling you right now. And I looked at them and I burst out laughing. And they didn't know what to do with me because there's this 6'4", 200+ pound white guy in
named
there,
Lachlan.
named Lachlan. It's a Pan Pacific hotel. It's very Asian, and they hire a lot of Filipinos and a lot of people from the Asian countries. And like half the staff was from that area. And this is new to me. I just came from Yak, whitest place in the world. And I'm surrounded by Hong, Dong, and Wang.
All right, you're up.
We became friends. We'd have coffee together.
Time count violation. Thanks for starting us out with that beautiful story, Lachlan Cross. Gives me great pleasure to bring in one of my favorite guests. He's got a podcast I absolutely love. It's a Hummer. It's always trending at crier.ca, crier.co, which is where we all share a little bit of a podcast home. He's from Alberta. He keeps an eye on the beat. That's why it's called the Breakdown AB. Please welcome to the program, Nate Pike, ladies and gentlemen. Nate Pike is back in the hizzy.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm doing good.
If you would have brought somebody on named Wang, I would have lost my shit.
No, I would never do that. Well, I would if they delivered the same content as Nate and if I knew Nate, but no, his name's just Nate.
Yes.
Anyway, you're good. Nice to see you. Happy?
Yeah, we did a show last night that's available to listen to as a podcast anywhere that you want to. Look at that plug. It was, man, it's just a crazy time in Alberta right now. It's
no shit.
The last week in particular has been a series of, there's no bottom. Like that's the thing that we're trying to reconcile at the show here, is the idea that all of the norms that you would have expected from politicians or elected officials, they're just gone. They're gone. Yeah. There's no norms left anymore. We saw and this is such a hard one to talk about. It really, really is.
Which one? The Chinese election interference?
No.
Or is it the Take Back Alberta? Is it the acetaminophen from Turkey that's no good? What is it? What are you talking about over there?
It was Danielle Smith bragging about her little secret. And her little secret was, she, on her radio show last weekend, she went out of her way, and it was a painful seg. And she used to do radio. So like if anybody knows how to say,
she wasn't good at it.
No.
Well, there's that.
Let's be like, can I just quickly just correct you here? There are a lot of people who quote used to do radio that are not good at radio. That's why
a lot of people that still do it.
Used to do it, and there are a lot of people who still do it who also can't. I listened to a lot of it this morning in the GTA. I was getting mad listening to the radio this morning. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Stream the locker room in your car.
Sorry.
There you go. So she went on her radio show, and the host of the Your Province, Your Premier radio show, which is just an unending barrage of really. He was trying to move to the next topic, and she was like, "But wait, Wayne, weren't you going to ask me about the two fallen EPS officers?" And then went into this. For anybody who's not familiar, tragically, there were two EPS officers who lost their lives recently in the line of duty in Edmonton. And she did this incredibly clumsy seg to make sure that she included herself in that conversation. And she even went so far. And this was before any official information had been released by the family or by EPS in regards to what sort of memorial or funeral arrangements they were going to be. She decided to throw in at the end, "Oh, and by the way, I can announce that there's going to be a regimental funeral." And then she gave a date. Without the family's permission, without EPS's permission, she just wanted to be the first person to announce this thing. And she got the date wrong.
Oh.
But then at a press conference later on in the week, she was asked by members of the media, "Hey, do you regret this very clumsy thing that you did without the permission of the family or without the consent of EPS?" Yeah. And she was like, "Yeah, I did get the date wrong." No apology. Nothing. And then she doubled down and continued to say, "Hey, you know what? I got the date wrong, but I can't even repeat what she said."
She said we're going to celebrate. That's what she said. If I'm reading you correctly, and if I follow you on Twitter, which I do, you had an issue with that. And Locke, you and I never talked about it. But she was she was like, "We're going to celebrate."
It's important to realize anybody who's ever attended a funeral, anybody who's ever it's such a difficult thing to talk about. But anybody who's ever attended any kinds of these events or had to navigate the loss of someone knows that there's funerals and then there's the other things. So you have a funeral, and then very often after the funeral, there will be something like a celebration of life or a wake, but it's a separate event entirely. And for Smith to invoke the regimental funeral and then pivot to, we all should be celebrating together, was not only factually incorrect, but it was also like,
really fucking gross.
Why would you use that word?
Because she's not smart. That's why.
She's got no
And we
filter.
never talk about this because it's like it's so hard to be able to fucking have a conversation with anybody about the province of Alberta and the truth about it, because Alberta is very much closed, right? Like you can't have these conversations. And so when we see that stuff come our way, we're like, oh, that's just an idiot that absolutely misappropriated the death of two individuals for her own glorification and her own edification, right? That's what she did. She wanted to put a positive spin on two Edmonton police officers who were killed in cold blood by a 16-year-old when they attended a domestic dispute. And then she tried to own the narrative, and then she tried to endear herself to the victims of the families and their victims and everybody who's ever been killed in the line of duty, because she is a valueless and soulless idiot. That's what.
It was like I said last night.
And dumb.
I can't imagine somebody being so desperate to try to find their way back to the cool kids table in junior high that they would release that kind of hot gossip or perceive that as even being hot gossip, because there is an entire service that is mourning. All of their families are affected. I have friends who are police officers. I have friends who are married to police officers. This sort of thing hits them right to the core. And for Danielle Smith to be, but I know the things, guys, was just so beyond the pale.
Yeah. I have a real problem when these things happen, because if you don't, a lot of people won't know this, but in radio, there's a rush to get the information out, right? Like there is this overwhelming desire from people in this business, and I've never understood it, to be the first to report any information, but specifically tragedy, and then to somehow eke your way into the conversation or to be included in the discussion about it in some capacity for listens, for likes, for views. And I am just, I don't even know how to say this.
Embarrassed?
I'm disgusted by our business when things like this happen. And I got to be careful here, because there's a fine line between getting the information to people and being part of the community and feeling some empathy for what happened and for the families, right? But then there's this next level that I don't think some people in our industry see, where you're exploiting that family. You're exploiting that situation for your own benefit. And it drives me crazy. And it's the same players all the time in our business. It's the same people.
Media and politics.
I can write them fucking down right now. The type of the people that I know in the business that are like, oh, someone died. Let's get on. When we have a story like this,
let's endear ourselves to someone else's misery faster than everybody else. Let's get out there and make it look like we're part of this thing and we've been hurt too. Let's use this misery, this sadness, this grief, this nightmare that belongs to other people as a kite into people's Twitter feeds, as a fucking vehicle into their ears, as a way to get a vote. That's what it is.
And so, and a way to, like, this was the other thing that really pissed me off today. There's a news outlet that I generally respect. And
Crier.co? Yes. Is that it?
Maybe. But this is not the one I'm talking about. There's a news outlet that I generally respect, and there's a story published by a reporter who historically does good work. And they published a story today where they released the name of the 16-year-old who
I haven't
also
seen that yet.
who also died. And they justified it by saying that it was in the public interest. And then they put the story up, and the way that it was justified was saying, well, it's in the public interest. People need to know that this was a troubled young man. I think we already knew that. I think anybody who's been paying any sort of attention to the information that was released was able to put it together that a 16-year-old kid who murdered 2 police officers, then shot his mom, then died by suicide was troubled. I think we got there on our own. I don't think we needed his name, especially when the mother is still in the hospital. But just to put the absolute insult to injury, they put the story behind a paywall. And I am hard pressed to think of a better example of exploitive
journalism.
And it was really frustrating to see that from an outlet that I historically would say that I respected, that I would historically say would conduct real journalism. But the fact that they felt the need that they had to release this young man's name to, oh, he was troubled. No shit.
Well, and here's the other thing that happens now in the world that we live in, and this just disgusts me. Like, people start doing like charity things and like GoFundMe's for the families, and I'm like, like I said to my boss, I said, please, let's not do this. I said, if somebody connected to that family does something, I want to promote that. The guy that's on the radio station that plays Michael Jackson all day shouldn't be promoting a GoFundMe. Listen, maybe his dad was a cop or something. Like, if there's a path in, then I understand it. But we do this in this business where we jump on these stories and it becomes something it shouldn't be. And I'm always just disgusted by our business.
It turns into this nuclear weapon. And, I appreciate you bringing up that example, Nate. In Lockout, you're in Edmonton, and you support our men and women in uniform. You and I haven't talked about this story. You and I are very much in support of our men and women in the military, men and women in uniform. By and large, the vast majority of people who do that job stand there between bullets and you. Stand there between chaos and you. And so these two, and they're very young officers, both in their 20s, both lost their lives going to this call where a 16-year-old
one was 30 and one was 35.
Sorry, they were young in their early 30s. To me, they're young. To you, they're
young.
To us, these are young, haven't experienced life yet. And
one had a kid on the way.
You have all kinds of institutions gleaning information from this, spinning it, and using the murder of 2 young men whose families are grieving. And you know what? It speaks to the political institutions as they work with our media institutions, because this doesn't happen in a silo, right? The politicians that go out there and act this way, they work with people in media to be able to get this in front of people, get their messaging in front of people. There's just vehicles. These are vehicles that people use. And case in point, we mentioned it prior to the podcast, this China stuff with Canada. And I say this China stuff, it's much bigger than this China stuff. And I'll give you the Coles notes. A reporter named Sam Cooper, who works for Global News for the past 2 to 3 weeks, and he's the China hawk for Global. He's written a couple of books, widely panned as without information or without sources. Sam Cooper is a fire hose of hatred for the Chinese Communist Party. Now, listen, I'm not a friend of the Chinese Communist Party at all. In fact, I over the past 3 years, my dislike for the Chinese Communist Party, with the amount of people we lost from a disease that originated in a lab owned and run by the Chinese Communist Party, probably started there somewhere, right? But over the past, I would say 3-4 weeks, information has been leaking out from Sam Cooper, where he has been talking with people in CSIS, law enforcement, CSIS, our version of the FBI. And they have informed Sam Cooper and Just Global News through one former CSIS whistleblower that Chinese interference into our election systems, into our free and fair elections, provincial, federal, municipal, has been going on for a long time, and Canadians should know about it, which I agree. But They took sources from CSIS, which are unnamed. They haven't substantiated any of the people who leaked the information. Now, CSIS is looked at like it's a bullshit organization. Not only that, the government of Canada right now is underwater in terms of whether or not Canadians believe that we have been giving up influence to the Chinese Communist Party willingly, because that's the intimation in this writing by Sam Cooper at Global News, willingly giving up our Canadian influence, institutions, to that influence from China for money, for friendship, for relationships. And I'll get to some of the details here real quick because they kind of go hand in hand. Mackenzie Gray did a great little video, and he's got a nice little summary of it. We'll play it in a second. February 2021, Liberal Party of Canada MP Han Dong allegedly advised China's Consul General in Toronto that Beijing should hold off on immediately freeing the two Michaels. These are two gentlemen that were in Chinese jail for no reason for 800 days that we tried to get back for a very long time. And finally, we got them back, by the way, when we released the Huawei lady who was under house arrest for 3 years here in Canada.
And every Thursday went to a spa.
Yeah, had no problem. Loved it. Because he believed their release would benefit the Conservative Party of Canada, as two independent national security sources who spoke with reporter Sam Cooper. Okay? You guys following me so far? Decent job explaining it? Sam's thread. This explains more. National security sources said Han Dong allegedly suggested to Han Tao, China's consul general in Toronto, that if Beijing released the two Michaels, whom China accused of espionage, the opposition conservatives would benefit. In February 2021, a conversation occurred between Dong and Consul General Han Tao. CSIS reporting had already classified Dong as a close friend of the consulate based on the history of calls. National Security Office official said CSIS investigates and gathers intelligence, foreign state activity in Canada from human sources, surveillance meetings, and electronic interceptions. Weeks after the conversation between Dong and Consul General Han, China announced that it had tried Favour and Corvig, the two Michaels who were held in jail as ransom for the Chinese lady from Huawei that was being held in Vancouver. Closed doors on espionage charges. Based on the timing of Dong's alleged communication with Toronto Consulate, the announcement of the Chinese court proceedings in mid-March, CSIS considered whether Dong's alleged recommendation to Han had indeed influenced Beijing to show some kind of progression in the case. Now, what does all that mean? This is not just in a liberal silo. The accusations have been about conservatives that work with the Chinese Communist Party, liberals who work with the Chinese Communist Party, municipal elected officials, Vancouver, big article.
It's a strategy. It has been forever.
It has been going on for 40 fucking years.
Both sides of the aisle.
Not new. Like, raise your hands if you were under the auspices that Chinese election interference or Chinese influence interference has been going on in Canada for quite some time. Hands up. Anybody? Yeah. Russian? Yep. Right here. Got that one too. American? Yep. Got that right here. Yeah. We all get it, right? Somehow this is magically nuclear. Just
I don't like
for
to
the
put
liberals.
my hand up because
you don't.
Generally means I'm going to the office.
But there are a couple things going on here, and I'll get to the national security issues in just a second. But by virtue of the process that we just discussed of people, specifically media in this country, taking a story, not giving a fuck who it affects, as long as they get the lift and the halo effect for their friends. Not what, like, are we not living in that time when media is nothing like it used to be? There is no accountability in terms of telling us the story without a narrative where you're going to horse collar somebody, something, a brand, a group, an individual, a party. That is the time that we live in. And it was never more obvious to me. And listen, it's been obvious with the Toronto Star. It's been obvious with the Sun. It's been obvious with the National Post and the Post media companies. But this floored me because it did two things, right? It made us feel absolutely insecure and like our elections are not free, fair, or safe, number one. Makes me think CSIS is not in it for me or any Canadian and our law enforcement to boot. And now I don't trust anybody in government, not one person, because all I want from this, which is not what the political institutions that are using this as a fucking political ping pong ball want. What I want is I want to know the extent of all of it. That's all I want. We're not going to get it because there's so much at stake in terms of money, in terms of influence, in terms of policy and peddling, that there is no way conservatives or liberals or David Johnson are going to go, you know what? It's way worse than we thought, Canada. Here's an actual transparent look at the espionage and the influence that has been curated and is actionable in this fucking country. It'll never happen, ever. But now Canada has two major problems on its hands, right? One is we don't trust the fucking valueless people that are informing of us what's going on in this country, right? Sam Cooper absolutely abated his journalistic responsibility because we don't have any information. None. We don't know who that person is, who the sources are, the authenticity of those sources. And here's the other fucking thing. The CSIS director of years past, his name is Ward Elock. Okay? This is like an hour ago on CBC. He wants the leaker fucking charged. Watch this.
Could see last night was clearly upset, clearly denied this. How does he clear his name if that's the case?
Well, that's one of the problems, and does surprise me. Does surprise me in the context of the way the newspapers and global news are treating this. They may think that the information is sufficiently identified that they're safe to do so, but they're certainly damaging people's lives in the course of it. And this idea that there's a whistleblower out there that's providing this information, there is no whistleblower. This is an individual who's done enormous damage and ought to be prosecuted.
Can I jump in quick? Because Nate's going to have something intelligent to say, and I think the dumb guy should go first in this discussion. So I agree with you on sort of the moral firewalls that that have been sort of moved around, the way that we report things, and a lot of it has to do with social media. But here's my question. Like, I realize what happened here. I'm not dumb, but don't we want to know this, Dean?
Yeah. We all deserve to know it.
Yeah. Yes. So I understand why we're upset about how this was reported, and maybe it should have been done differently or whatever. But,
but what do you deserve to know? You deserve to know the truth. How do you know it's the truth? That's the point, is that they came with no receipts, nothing. Now, Global News is not about to put their license at risk of something that is totally false, right? However, the way that they did it is this is all backroom shit, right? But I want now, like I've kind of parted the Red Sea in my mind, Nate, and I want your opinion on this. But Ward Elock is me. It's like, hey, listen, I understand the need for, like, we want to know who's fucking with us. We want to know what foreign agencies are in our face. We want to know where that money's coming from. I want to know what Russia put into the convoy. I want to know what China put into election interference all across this country, municipally, provincially, and federally. I want to know all of it, right? However, I'd like to know facts, not take some guy's word for it with zero attribution.
I don't know. You're not going to get that with this, though.
You have to. You have to. There's a secret special act that says, hey, listen, if it's dangerous to Canada, we need to name who that person is. It's like a secret special act that Canada has, Espionage Act.
Is that the name of it?
Yeah, I think so. It's like the Super Secret Act or something like that. But Nate, I want your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I want Nate's thoughts on this.
Because it is one and the same of how the political institutions are working with the media institutions to be able to affect some kind of change. And man, oh man, the irresponsibility and the damage it is causing to Canadians' trust in our institutions and our democracy is fucked, in my opinion.
It always has been.
It's gotten worse, though. I mean, one of the things that I think has happened that we do an absolute garbage job of contending with is there are all of these sources of information that exist out there. And one of the problems that presents is some of these information sources are doing their due diligence. They're doing everything that they can to verify the information. And as you just said, there's a major company like Global isn't going to go ahead with this story unless they've vetted it 7 ways through Sunday by their lawyers. Yeah. But then there are also organizations that have zero compunctions about just lying and making stuff up. And I think it's harder and harder for people to be able to look at the source of information and go, okay, well, but that source, I think we got to give some credibility. And the example that I'll use is the recent revelations that have happened here in Alberta in regards to Danielle Smith and her administration. Allegedly, I have to use that word. But allegedly, members of Danielle Smith's office reached out to the Crown prosecutors and said, hey, you know, all those COVID charges that you got going on, it would be really great if you could just make some of those, you know, make those kind of go away a little bit. Now, that is absolutely, if that's what happened, interference in the administration of justice, obstruction of justice. It's a whole big problem.
Sounds illegal.
Yeah. And we don't want nobody, to be clear, nobody should want any elected official to have the ability to call up a prosecutor and say, yeah, but this guy's a buddy. Because once that happens, then that erodes all of the foundations of our democratic institutions. It erodes all of the foundations of the justice institutions that we've built, which are problematic, but it's the best we got right now. That story wouldn't have happened if anonymous, confidential people hadn't stepped forward and said, hey, this is a problem. And a lot of people looked at, in the same way, looked at it and said, well, but if it's anonymous, CBC, you got to release your sources. We trade at the Breakdown in anonymity all the time because there are a lot of people who are deathly terrified of what's going to happen if their name gets tied to the thing that they want people to know. And I think that it's that's a razor's edge to walk, because if you don't allow the anonymity, the reporter doesn't get out there. If you demand that everybody has to attach their name, the story doesn't get out there. Yeah. And so what is looking at the CBC thing, the story that CBC broke about the Smith office allegedly interfering in the Crown prosecutor's office, if CBC hadn't been able to protect the anonymity of those sources, of which there were more than one, and I think that's an important distinction to make, because from what little I know of this situation, there was only one. That makes me have some questions. But when there's multiple sources who are all saying the same thing, and they're just saying, hey, we're willing to tell you about these things, but we're afraid for a whole list of reasons. And let's be clear, there's some crazy people in Alberta right now. I don't know if you heard, we had this border blockade and there were people planning to kill a bunch of cops. Yeah. That's a thing that happened. So
and there was politicians on that.
Yes, there were. And they attended that. We have politicians. There's a current minister of the Crown here in Alberta who went to Ottawa and blocked the streets with the folks. So the climate is not conducive to just tell the truth and you'll be fine. So it's complicated. Is
Locke?
Well, I mean, I get up every day and I'm just trying to do my best to not let that cynical wheel of mine turn, and it's hard.
Does it get like worse? Because one of the things that happens when you hear all of these stories and they're coming out, like, you know, and just to add texture to it, right? Play this video that kind of explains everything. And if, depending on what side of the aisle you're on, okay, depending on what culture you belong to, which party you support, because we're highly divided, right? There are people who really want all of this to be true. There are people who only want parts of it.
I don't know if we're represented.
No,
that's
both.
The issue.
I think both. I think it's a great statement.
I have no representation in this province.
If you're a conservative, you want this story to be true, this part of the story to be true. If you're a liberal, you don't want it to be true. And I've watched everybody tell people Sam Cooper is awful. Global is a threat to national security. I don't know that to be true. I don't appreciate the fucking skullduggery in the reporting. But at the end of the day, we've heard these rumors for so long. we're all aware of Chinese influence or CCP influence, not Chinese influence. Very important distinction here. We're not talking about Chinese people. We're talking about the government. We're talking about the Chinese communist dictatorial government that imprisons and enslaves and murders their own fucking people. Okay? That's what we're talking about. And the 40-year plan to get influence via assimilation, not just in this country, but countries abroad. That is the goal. And so the goal for them has always been, like it is with Russia, how do we sow discord? They'll work with anybody, right? Anybody, which is why conservatives, liberals,
to muddy the waters,
provincial, municipal people are all caught up in this. Here's a quick recap. Mackenzie Gray from a tremendous reporter put together a little 2-minute thing. He works for Global. These are the allegations in 2 minutes or less. Let's watch this.
In February 2021, Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor had been detained in a Chinese prison for nearly 800 days. But while they languished away, Ontario Liberal MP Han Dong allegedly advised a top Chinese diplomat to hold off on immediately freeing them. 2 independent national security sources have told Global News that Dong spoke with China's Consular General in Toronto, Han Tao, and suggested to him that if Beijing released the 2 Michaels, then federal conservatives would benefit. How exactly is not clear. Dong allegedly initiated the discussion with the Consul General, where he also allegedly recommended that Beijing offer some show of progress with the 2 Michaels cases to help benefit the Liberals, according to the 2 sources. Dong confirmed to Global News that the conversation took place, but he denied he initiated the discussion and says that he advocated for the 2 Michaels to be set free. At every opportunity before they returned home, I adamantly demanded their release to Canada without delay, said Dong. Any suggestions otherwise are false and are attempts to mislead you, your readers, and slander me. The 2 Michaels had been jailed in apparent retribution for Canada's detention of Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou. But at the time of Dong's conversation with the Chinese diplomat, the Prime Minister had publicly been calling for their release.
This is an issue that is a top priority.
Trudeau's office says the Prime Minister only learned of the conversation with the Chinese envoy after Dong told PMO. But Dong only informed the Prime Minister's team after Global News reached out for comment.
As a Chinese Canadian, I am so proud.
A national security official told Global News that by the time the alleged conversation in February 2021 took place, CSIS had already classified Dong as a close friend of the consulate based on his history of calls. But they had also considered if Dong was acting as a back-channel interlocutor between the Canadian and Chinese governments. The PMO denied that theory, saying at no time was Mr. Dong ever used as a back-channel. Global News has not been able to independently verify what was said in the communication between Dong and the Consul General. We reached out to CSIS for comment on the Dong conversation. A spokesperson for the agency said they can neither confirm nor deny the authenticity of the...
Okay. Yeah, I know, dude. Me too.
I am
so
a
funny.
child. I'm so sorry. Every time I hear something, Dong
I know.
conversation or
We're all the
Dong
same.
in the caucus,
But
I can't.
what I got out of that, Nate, was we cannot independently verify any of this.
Well, but here's the thing. There's no way that you're going to be able to independently verify because it was a conversation that happened. So there's no between 2 people. Here's the thing that I find interesting.
But they're giving details of the conversation between those 2 people. So how can they not independently verify those details, and they're going to still give
got
those
a
details
recording
in?
of it.
They may have a recording of it, but the 2 pieces that I took out of that were A, 2 sources. That changes the picture a little bit. And B, he confirmed the conversation happened. He just said, I was the one who started it. So at that point, if he's saying, yes, this happened, he's just quibbling over.
I think he was, hold on. Sorry, Nate. I just want to correct one thing because I may have misunderstood, but it sounded like the Liberal MP, the Chinese Canadian, suggested that he was part of the conversation but didn't initiate it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, sorry. I thought maybe you said it the other way around.
And those details, that's what he said. And those details are wrong. That's
sorry,
what
Nate.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, then it gets into a really dangerous place of sort of he said, because we know the conversation happened now. We've got these 2 independent sources, and we've got him saying, oh yeah, there's totally a conversation. Obviously he's not saying, and I was totally colluding in order to try to advance the political interests of the Liberal Party because that was what was convenient at the time, and I'm a good little political poodle. He didn't, of course he's not going to say that, but there's definitely like I said at the beginning, I haven't been following this Alberta politics chews up my entire universe.
So incredible you can speak to it effectively, though.
But hold on, is he more concerned, Nate? Here's the question: do you think he's more concerned about the problems he actually faces here in Canada, or the problems he might face retribution-wise from the Chinese government if this doesn't go or doesn't come out the wash the way they want it to?
Yes,
I think that's the underlying story here.
Both.
I think so, because that's the thing, and this is one of the reasons why I find these stories and the politicians who make these stupid mistakes is that you are eroding the public trust in the institutions that are supposed to keep us safe-ish. And we saw this. I mean, I'm going to go back and use COVID as an example. There were people who jumped on it and put out all kinds of and disinformation because it was financially viable for them. They did the clickbait.
Mm-hmm.
They knew they could get some subscribers and all of that thing, with no regard for what the long-term consequences are going to be. And unfortunately, what I look at the end of the day, what I look at with this story is a further erosion of the trust in the institutions, because the Conservatives are tied to it, the Liberals are tied to it, the international, our intelligence agency is tied to it. All of those things are effectively being eroded. And I honestly, looking at this whole thing, and I'm purely speculating, if I was the person who was supposed to be sowing discord, as you said there, Dean, this worked out perfectly, because now nobody trusts anybody about anything, and I get to do whatever I want.
Exactly. Ding, ding, ding.
They won, we lost. The whole goal was to hurt us in every way possible. Correct.
So here's the other. I find where we're at right now with Trump really interesting, because when I'm trying to follow this story online to sort of glean something from it, to understand all the ins and outs, you get people that seemingly want Trump to go to jail from both sides. And it took me a bit to figure that out. I'm like, oh, hold on. That guy's a Trumper. Why does he want him to go to jail? And then that guy's a really strong liberal thread through his correspondence online. Why does they both want him to go to jail? Why? We have a similar situation here with this, in that both sides, no matter what your sort of values are, seem to want the world to light up on fire because it proves their theory, right? And that's the state of politics right now. We live in a world right now where both sides, the extreme sides, just want to continue the chaos to continue, because they view it as a way to secure their position. See, I told you.
Totally.
And they're both doing it.
Dude, and those extremes are fucking surfboards for foreign interference.
Who doesn't show up to protests? You know who doesn't donate to political parties? Happy people.
Yeah.
If you want people to show up, if you want people to show up to be organizers, if you want people to get fired up and take to the streets, you have to keep them angry. And that's one of the things that everybody and their dog has figured out, is that if we constantly, like, look at the election that we're heading into right now. Danielle Smith isn't campaigning against the NDP. She's campaigning against Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
Because he's a safe enemy to have in Alberta.
But Danielle Smith has also realized something, is that, and I hate to say this, and I'm not an NDPer. It's a childhood thing. My stepfather was
liberal.
an NDPer.
You're liberal. You use bike lanes. You've got an EV. You got a sign behind you. We've already talked about
liberal.
this.
I'm totally liberal.
Big time.
No, but she's realized that her competition isn't the NDP.
Oh no, I think she knows it is. I'm going to disagree with you there.
I disagree with you, because I think Nutley is dropping the ball huge. She does not know how to play in this. She doesn't know how to fight in this cage match. And Danielle Smith is just like, and I'm not a fan of either. This is not me supporting it. I called this months ago. I said, watch out. Danielle Smith is actually going to win this next election, because I'm watching Nutley get dragged into this, and she's in way over her head on how to fight ugly. It's not working for her.
Ooh, I think that anybody who underestimates the cutthroatedness, I mean, yeah,
that's my shirt available on the Locker Room merch page. Stay angry, everyone. Go buy one today.
Yeah, I think anybody who underestimates the ability of the NDP to be just as Machiavellian as Danielle Smith in the UCP does so at their own detriment, because there's
really okay. I haven't seen any signs of it, and we're fucking going to the polls, and it's split down the middle, Nate. So she's going to step out right now and start playing dirty, because she's not. She's trying to play this game of. And Danielle keeps taking away her pawns. Like, she keeps like stepping up and doing what the NDP would do. All right, here's checks for all of you with kids. Here you go, families. Like, she's doing what the NDP would do, and the NDP doesn't know how to handle it, right? We're going to throw a whole bunch of money at healthcare.
I think there's two possibilities. And I don't know which one I'm landing on yet, to be clear. I think there's one possibility, and this is the one that I've been parked on for the last several months, very similar to where you are right now. I think there's a possibility that the NDP have completely crapped the bed on their comm strategy. And I think there's lots of evidence to support that. I'm also open to the possibility, he said cautiously, that part of the NDP strategy is to let Danielle Smith self-immolate, because if there's one thing that we've seen over the last several months, if you give Danielle Smith the opportunity, she absolutely will self-immolate. And I think that there's a possibility that might be part of the NDP's overall strategy. But I
said that, Nate, hold on. I said that months ago. I said, Nutley, stay in your basement. Let her do all your work for you. Don't comment on anything she does. Just let it simmer. It'll drive her crazy. But she can't. They can't. Follow them on Twitter. They're constantly responding to and they're trying to react to the things that she's doing with this surplus, this $12 billion or $24 billion. And it just doesn't work. She should have stayed in her basement, got pleasantly drunk every night on craft beers, and not said a word until a week before the election and said, remember me? I'm back. I might be a better option than this lunatic. And she didn't. She's sticking her nose in things too much. She's saying too much. It's time to respond to it. And I think it was a huge mistake. We're talking way too much about Alberta right now.
I think that you're overestimating the representative reach of Twitter. And I think that one of the great places that this is an example of is going back to the tragic situation around the two EPS officers. When Danielle Smith went on her radio show last Saturday and she did what she did, shortly after that radio show aired, she put up a post where she said, hey, everybody, we should all really wait for EPS to finalize the details because, we should do that. No apology, no clarification of I've got it wrong. Guess where that wasn't posted? Facebook. She posted it on Twitter so she could say she did, because Twitter is where the hyper-engaged people live. Trust me, I spend a little bit of time on there. But when it comes to Facebook, Danielle Smith knows that Facebook is where her base lives. And I think that Rachel Notley knows the same thing too. And I think that one of the possibilities, and again, I haven't landed anywhere on this yet, but I think that one of the possibilities that exists is there is a lot of the hyper engaged are looking at the messaging from the NDP and they're going, why are you not firing on any of these things? But if you take a look at what stories are actually making it to the mainstream media, they're not talking about the NDP responded poorly. They're not talking about the NDP have garbage comms. What they are talking about is Danielle Smith said another dumb thing. And also, finally, I'm going to give you the seg here, Dean, because I know we spent some time on this.
Yes.
They're finally talking about Take Back Alberta.
Taking back Alberta. Thank you for Lachlan. Thank you, first of all, for completely murdering an entire conversation about Justin Trudeau and the Chinese Communist Party's espionage and turning it back to Alberta politics. I really appreciate that.
Hold on, you know what I did? I I
Yeah, you
brought
did.
Trump into it. So
Yeah,
if it
and then you
swung
turned
back
and you
to
pivoted,
Alberta,
and then
if
you
it
started
swung back
talking
to
about Alberta and Rachel Notley and being in the basement. It's okay. I expected it. I liked
I
it.
blame the fucking birds.
Okay, sure.
Should.
I'll say this, is that I want to pivot to take back Alberta because we're here now, so what the fuck. But I will say this before we move. There are a lot of people out there that look at me
You
and they
should
go,
move here, Dean.
"You're
Dean,
not a
you need to
chance.
move.
I'd
You can live in my
I'd
basement."
literally rather move to Saskatchewan than Alberta." So here's the thing. There are a lot of people out there that look at what we do here as if we are partisan in some way, shape, or form, as if we support a party, an ideology behind a party. We go after people that are valueless, okay? That's it. People that don't have any values, people who are just in it for themselves, in it for the party, in it for the influence. If indeed Justin Trudeau knew about this interference, he should be fucking just as accountable as everybody else in
You
this
should
process.
step down.
Yes.
Well, everybody should step down.
Yeah.
If indeed Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, did not take a briefing on this espionage shit, which is in the news as well,
Yeah.
and there's documented proof of it. If indeed Pierre Poilievre said no to a public inquiry about all foreign espionage working with and for different parties and businesses in this country, which he voted against 2 days ago, by the way, he doesn't want people to look into it. If indeed those things are true, we need to start putting politicians in fucking handcuffs. We need to start putting people in the media in fucking handcuffs for putting us in danger, putting our security at risk. And it's not a national thing, right? The kettling of people, taxpayers for a political end is best described as what's going on in Alberta with the Take Back Alberta movement, which you've been keeping an eye on, Nate. And it's something that Lachlan and I haven't talked about because every time we start talking about Alberta and I start mocking it, what happens? He's like, no, you got to take it easy on these guys. You got to take it easy on these. You don't understand how it works.
Yeah. I don't do that. We don't talk about it because you and I are morons.
And we don't know anything
both aware of how dumb we are, so we avoid conversations where there's the likelihood that it might prove us to be more dumber, like just as dumb as we thought we were.
Incorrect. I will fake that till I make it 100 times out of 100. It's you that's too dumb. I will fake it all the time. You just know your role. So let me ask you something.
I'm a
Nate.
dumb guy. I admit.
Locke, have you heard about the Take Back Alberta movement?
I have.
Or do you not pay attention to it? Because it fucking like all the way out here, and the people
It's
that
a
are involved.
slogan.
It's not just a slogan, Nate. What is it? Take me through it.
Oh, it's a hot mess. So in order to here's what they pretend to be. I'll give you the facade first, and then I'll give you the behind the facade. What they pretend to be is a grassroots movement that has resulted from bad democracy in Alberta for too long, and they are educating people and helping people organize, and they're going to improve all of the democracy in Alberta. That's what they say. That's what their advertising model is. But when you pull back the curtain, there's a whole lot more going on. The chief organizer behind Take Back Alberta is a guy named David Parker. David Parker has ties going way back in conservatism in Alberta and Canada. David Parker, the organization Take Back Alberta, and it's not just a slogan; it's a registered TPA at this point. So I
didn't know that.
Yeah, it's not just it's a shadow political party, in effect, is what it is. The origins of it actually go back to not grassroots Alberta, British Columbia. And a lot of the funding for the beta testing of what we're seeing happening here in Alberta with Take Back Alberta actually comes from, and I'm not even making this up, the founder of Lululemon. Do with that what you will. But David Parker came to Alberta, and he took advantage. I mean, the scary thing about Take Back Alberta to me, personally, is what they've done is they've figured out, hey, COVID, that was a shit show, wasn't it? There's a lot of people who got really angry about that. They organized all these protests. They got to know each other really well. They got to build these sophisticated and major networks across social media all through the time of COVID. And now they're bored. Somebody should do something about that. And so David Parker and Take Back Alberta started holding these rallies across the province. And a lot of it stemmed out of a particular constituency where ex-minister Jason Nixon, who's a problematic dude. I mean, Google Jason Nixon horses, enough said. But he won the nomination after somebody who was running against him was disqualified. And that person who was running against him actually had, by some measure, a fairly good shot at winning and taking out this minister who's also a bestie of Jason Kenney, who was at the time still the premier of Alberta. His opponent was taken out. Jason Nixon won the nomination. Off we pop. His opponent hasn't gone away. It's a guy named Tim Hoven. And Tim has worked with Take Back Alberta, and they've built this machine that goes to constituencies and goes to the UCP AGM. They now own 50% of the UCP board. And they did that explicitly because they wanted control of the party, because they believe if you control the party, then you control the premier and you can do whatever the hell you want. They've been very clear about that. That's been stated publicly. I'm not being hyperbolic with that. So they took over the UCP AGM in part. And now what they're doing is they're going to UCP nomination races across the province as they roll out, particularly in rural Alberta. And they're saying, this is the candidate that we like. We're not going to officially endorse anyone, but all of these resources suddenly find their way behind the candidate that Take Back Alberta has decided is going to be the candidate that they're going to recommend people support. And some of the candidates that are winning by landslides. Nomination races, typically in Alberta, you'll see maybe 300-400 people show up to vote. We're talking about thousands. They have managed to weaponize the whole freedom movement.
Is this loosely tied to David Wallace?
Not to my knowledge, is what I'll say to that. Okay. But what it is tied to is the Coots blockade, because one of the biggest figures in Takes Back Alberta, Marco Van Huigenbos, is how I like to say his last name.
He's a cattle rancher. This is the cattle rancher that his last name spelled Hoven. Yeah. He took part in the Coots blockade, didn't he?
Yeah. He's one of the biggest figures in Take Back Alberta.
Yeah.
They have there is a DJ who was huge in the COVID movement. She fancied herself to be a reporter, allegedly. I'll just say allegedly a third time, just to really make my point clear.
Oh, this is the girl who said she was a DJ that went to hospitals and she protested and prevented kids from getting in.
And she yelled at nurses, and she accused nurses of lying about what the situation was in hospitals.
Yeah, I remember.
This is who are the core organizers of Take Back Alberta.
Hot.
Isn't this a typical structure for a lobby group?
No, this is a structure for a political party.
But
make no mistakes. They have their own databases. Okay. This isn't just a lobbyist who's lobbying on a particular issue. This is a shadow political party that is being.
But is it illegal, Nate? I don't understand. I understand that where your
organizing is not illegal. No, this isn't illegal. This is
not illegal, right?
No, because what they're doing, if I'm not mistaken, is they're having a party within a party. Like, no, this is like a party that's rising up within the UCP, as far as I understand. These are like extreme. What's their ideology? What's the background of people that believe in
anti-COVID?
Like how far right? Like what do they believe? Are they super religious?
Anti-science.
Just keep going.
Keep going, right? Until you
keep going. You're not going to run out of space.
Are there anti-abortion? Yes.
There are contingents of that.
Pro-Jesus? Yes.
Oh, Lord Almighty, yes.
Yes. Like prayers in school, that kind of stuff. Yep. Anti-trans.
Yep.
Yeah. Anti-LGBTQ.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. They're religious lunatics is what they are. And that is the party that is rising up inside the UCP, which is currently full of lunatics. This is the
we version
of those lunatics.
That far right element was anybody that doesn't follow politics would be aware that far right element is a thread through the UCP party. Without the intimate knowledge you have of this organization, Take Back Alberta, Nate, I think most people that sort of sit in the middle and are just disgusted by politics as a whole, I'm in that boat know where politics is going in this province and in this country too, right?
See, the difference is though, is that you called it a thread. It's not a thread. I've been waiting for the opportunity to make this reference because everybody else has been doing it, and I've just felt left out. But I just finished the series last week. This is the bite from The Last of Us. That's what this is. Checks in the mail. It's done. The thing is rising up inside of the UCP. You got a couple of days. It's
religious cordyceps, religious fungus.
Exactly. That's exactly what we're talking about here. But
it's a great movie, or great reference, I should say. Yeah,
thank you. But that's what's happening here. They have.
I don't get the Lululemon connection. Can
we just stay on task here, ADHD? Just let him finish.
Sorry.
Yeah, we'll go back to the Lululemon in a minute. Just hang on.
Okay,
keep going.
They have 50% of the UCP provincial board. They have almost full control of a stunning number of constituency associations. They are proposing, and this is where you really gotta settle in, because one of the things that they're proposing is that they want constituency associations, just the constituency association, to have the ability to recall their MLA. Now, that sounds like democracy in action, but here's the thing that you have to realize. When we're talking about constituency associations being able to recall an MLA, you're talking about a board of people that is at most 30 that now would theoretically, this is their goal, God hopes that it doesn't come true, but a group of 30 people who would be able to override the votes of every single person who voted in that election, because that MLA isn't doing what they're told by this small group of people. This is, by every measure, the tyranny of the minority. That's
how can they possibly do that, though, Nate? Come on, you can't. That supersedes our election rules.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Is that it actually, these are loopholes. These are things that, as far as I understand it, Nate, if I'm not mistaken, that these are loopholes where you can go ahead and you can organize and you can take part in boards and you can take over boards and you can figure out the people that you want on those boards that secretly share the same ideology, and then they get to affect real change. Like the democracy that we live in, as Nate's describing it, is not just under attack. Like it's over. In Alberta, they've basically said they're not interested in, especially the governing party of the UCPs, with this tangible extremist arm that literally is currently holding everybody hostage. They're the craziest of crazies are holding the crazies hostage. That's what it sounds like.
Oh, fuck. I'm so glad I came on the podcast today.
But here's the thing, and this is why it's important. And this is why talking about what Take Back Alberta is so important, because they got the head start. There's no question about that. And you take a look at who the key players are in Take Back Alberta. These are the people who were heavily involved in the freedom movement. These are people who were heavily involved in the COVID protests and all of those things. They got the head start in the organization. They're able to do these things for two reasons. One, lots of bullshit. So they take the misinformation, the disinformation. You want to see one of these Take Back Albertans? That works. Albertans. Heads explode.
Albertans.
Well, mention the letters WEF.
Yeah. World Economic Forum.
Eat that stuff up like it's candy. So they've got the bullshit and they've got the organization. That doesn't mean. The biggest thing that they have going for them, though, is apathy. They're basing everything on the fact that if they're able to hyper-engage 3%, 4% of the electorate, if they're able to hyper-engage that 3 or 4%, there's another one, 15-minute cities. If they're able to do
that is unbelievable to me. I can't believe how riled people get up. I just found out about 15 minutes seas like 2 months ago, and every time we mention it on the show, Nate, they just come crawling out of the woodwork. It's insane.
But this is what I'm saying. That represents the people who hold those views are a very small minority of the population. Period. There's polling that holds that out. Now they're working on expanding their little This Is Us or Last of Us reach, but they're only able to do that because of apathy.
Because
And
people
I
like
said
us.
this-
Because of people like
Dean,
you, dude.
I
Like
said
people like
this-
you and me that go, fuck this.
Yeah,
right?
we're out.
That's the goal.
I said
That's
this
the
the
goal.
other day. You made some comment about Chris Sky. Oh, he'll never have a chance. And I'm like, don't say that stuff out loud. The reason why we need to be worried about guys like that running for any level of politics, especially municipal politics, is because it is a disgustingly low percentage of the population that votes in municipal elections. And you can see it one way or the other about how a city is run based on the level of apathy.
Yeah.
We've got a city council in Edmonton that is basically, they super serve and they do not fucking care. 100% they don't care about the middle, because the middle does not vote. They go right after
Or donate.
that hardcore extreme point of view.
Well, dude, you
and
see
they
it on
super
Twitter.
serve it.
I know.
They super serve it. That's why we got $500 million worth of bike lanes coming down the fucking pipe.
Which
I
you'll
hate to
be
bring
using.
that up.
Which you'll be
Yeah,
using and
I'm
enjoying on
Scooter
your EV.
lanes. I'm referring to them as scooter lanes now.
Yeah, as you should. But dude, that is the goal, Nate. You've described it so well, and I appreciate you doing it. And you can tie that back into the problem that we have nationally too with this Chinese Communist Party interference bullshit. Is the goal is how do we not just anger the majority of the voting public in this country? How do we make them so angry they
You gotta
throw
scare
their
them.
hands up in
have to scare
disgust and say, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not voting this year. Not even going to bother.
You have to
How do they
scare
do?
them.
And you know what? Watch what's going on nationally, where I put out a tweet today and I'm like, you know what? Fuck everybody. I want to know everything. I want to know everything on the liberal side. I want to know everything on the conservative side. I want to know who they're fucking with provincially. I want Russia. I want China. I want all of it. And the amazing part about that whole tweet thread that I put out today were the fact that everybody chimed in and they all wanted the same thing.
Welcome
which
into
was-
my canoe.
Well, but
I've been
I'm
trying
saying
to
is
get you
that's-
over here for a
no,
while.
but that I'm here. I've been here for a
You're
long
all
time.
assholes.
No, dude, I've been saying that forever. We're the fucking marks. We're the political marks. We're the influence marks. We're the people that these guys like to jack up. What we have on this panel right here are three people who know that we're not marks, right? They know, like, we're smart enough to go, I'm not buying any of that shit. I'm not buying any of the Chinese interference stuff until I see fucking receipts. Well, guess what? We're not going to see them. I'm not going to buy anything coming out of the UCP until I see facts. Well, guess what? You're not going to see those facts because they don't give a fuck about facts. They care about one thing and one.
Just know that Danielle Smith lies all the time.
All the time. They all do.
People don't care.
Dude, and dude, let's play this out, okay? Because we're unbiased, centrist people. I'm amazed at how many times this shit happens where something will hit the news about espionage, wrongdoing, single source contracts, and it doesn't matter who they are, liberal, conservative, doesn't matter where they are. They all say the same thing. This is wrongdoing. I'm innocent. None of this stuff ever happened. Not like they said it happened. Well, I'm pretty sure some of it's fucking happening, right? Like, I'm fairly fucking positive. And then we go to Han Dong's statement. He pulled himself out, this guy. Pulled himself out of the caucus yesterday, Liberal caucus. Did you guys watch his
We
statement?
got less dong in the caucus.
No? It's remarkable. It's 4 minutes long. I want to play this for you, right? This, I don't know if this is acting. I don't know if he's serious. I have no idea. This is the gentleman with the Liberal Party who's been accused of espionage. Credibly accused of espionage by Sam Cooper of Global News. It's 4 minutes long. You got to hang in there because there's a lot of crying towards the end. Let's watch it together.
I rise on a point of order. I have informed the Prime Minister and the leadership of the Liberal Party caucus that I will be sitting as an independent at the conclusion of these remarks. Mr. Speaker, I'm in your hands as to what happens next. To all my colleagues in the Parliament, media reports today quoting unverified and anonymous sources have attacked my reputation and call into questions my loyalty to Canada. Let me be clear. What has been reported is false. and I will defend myself against these absolutely untrue claims. But let me assure you, as a parliamentarian and as a person, I have never, and I will never, would never advocate or support the violation of the basic human rights of any Canadian, of anyone, anywhere, period. The accusations are false. My family came to Canada for freedom. I have had the privilege of being elected to this House, and I believe I have served honorably and pledge to continue to serve honorably and fulfill my oath of office. I will continue to serve the residents of Don Valley North as an independent member of this House. I'm taking this extraordinary step because sitting the government caucus is a privilege, and my presence there may be seen by some as a conflict of duty and the wrong place to be as an independent investigation pursues the facts in this matter. I will be sitting as an independent so that business of government and indeed the business of Parliament is not interrupted as I work to clear my name and the truth is presented to Parliament and to Canadian people. I am a proud Liberal, and I am proud of the work our government does day in and day out to serve the people of Canada. I also don't want to distract from that important work. Before concluding, I want to assure Mr. Michael Spavor and Mr. Michael Covert and their families that I did nothing to cause them any harm. Like everyone in this House, I worked hard and advocated for their interest as a parliamentarian. The allegations made against me are as false as the ones made against you. To my constituents, I will continue to work on your behalf as your Member of Parliament. To my staff, I thank you. I know the days ahead will be difficult, but I will be there to support you as we continue to serve the people of Don Valley North. To my family, and in particular, my parents, who brought us here to Canada. To my wife, Sophie, and my kids, I love you. I thank you for all the support and love you gave me. The truth will protect us. Our honor and our family will get through this together. Sorry about that. Thank you, Speaker.
All right, there you go. A lot of crying, a lot of tears.
That
If
seemed legit.
indeed, well, hang on though. He hasn't sued anybody.
Yeah.
If that's me, and I'm that sad, these guys are lying. Nothing's going on. I'm suing the fuck out of everybody involved in this.
Yeah.
Like everybody tonight, today. And I can't, this is the thing. We can't get the context from him. We can't get context from anybody because all the sources are anonymous and we don't know who said what. We don't know if that's true. If it is true and he's lying, that's an amazing fucking job of acting. He's not lying.
I don't think he was acting. I question where and why I shouldn't say a question. I would be interested in knowing where and why those emotions are coming from, because what that appears to be. There we go. Somebody already just beat me to it in the comments. You got good viewers here, Dean. The Shane piece. He fell apart when he started talking about the impact on his parents and on his family. And I've seen it firsthand. Political actors get caught up in the moment and they think that they're doing the big thing for the party. And I've seen really good people do really bad things. And there's lots of different ways that we can lie to ourselves and justify those things. But when you start to consider the impact that that's going to have on your your family, your friends, that's when stuff starts to get real quick.
Yeah.
And what I saw there, and this is just my interpretation, I'm just a guy with the birds aren't real shirt. But what I saw there was somebody who was experiencing some deep regret over the shame that they had brought their family.
Yeah.
Great point.
That's the point.
And in particular, my parents, who brought us here to Canada. To my wife, Sophie, and my kids, I love you. I thank you for all the support and love you give me. The truth will protect us. Our honor and our family will get through this together. Sorry about.
Yeah, so that's an honor shame piece.
Yep.
To your point. Yeah.
That's what I see.
And wherever that comes from, whatever the genesis is.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Shame piece. Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, he was able to get through the first. And I've done. Here's the two things that I'll say. When
you've shamed your family, tell us about that.
I haven't. Well, I have had to have
I've had moments.
public
me too.
statements.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the ways
I'm no stranger to making public apologies as well. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Or shame.
I think that one of the ways that I crossed your paths initially, Dean, was when it was brought to my attention that there were certain people who took umbrage with some of the things that the show chose to highlight that may or may not have been allegedly racist. And I had to say to my audience, hey, we're a small little podcast here. And there are some people who have a lot of resources who are coming for us. And the work that we do here actually means a whole lot to me, but I cannot fight this on my own. Please help. And talking about some of the moments that were most impactful and influential for me over the 4 years that we've done the show, I cracked. I don't have any problem saying that because those things do mean a lot to me. But I think where you can tell what affects the person the most is when it affects them the most. And so watching that speech as he was talking about all of the things at the beginning and the democracy and the Liberal Party and all of that, he was pretty solid through all of that. But when it came to family and the shame and the honor piece, because I'm pretty sure I heard him use that word, that's where it all fell apart.
Yeah.
So
you know what?
Do you read into that? Do you guys read into that?
I'm trying to.
Yeah, you read into that, Nate, a little bit.
I mean, here's I don't know how much there is to read. I think it's very, very clear that the most important part of the speech, the most emotionally challenging part of that speech for him was when he was talking about the impact on his family. Clearly, his family means a great deal to him. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
But again, the question that I'm wondering about is, where is that shame coming from? Is that shame coming from a place of I did a bad thing and now y'all are going to have to wear it? Or does it come from a place of I've been targeted unjustly and now y'all are going to have to wear it?
Well, this whole conversation, Nate, is difficult because there's an element to this that none of us are going to understand. And I still don't quite understand the implications of it either. Like, I'm not here from another country with a communist leader who tries to influence the lives of its past and former citizens through political means, right? Like, so who knows what's going on behind the scenes? Like, the same thing was said about the hockey players, right? Everyone's like, why aren't the hockey players? Because, well, some of the Russian hockey players have family members in Russia, and you don't know what their opinion is. They might not be saying anything because they want to keep their grandma safe. Right. Like, I mean, there's all of this stuff to
well, I'll tell you something. When you go through a
but
majorly embarrassing public, like, this is publicly embarrassing for not just Liberals, it's publicly embarrassing for this gentleman, publicly embarrassing for Canadians. But let's just I'll insert some personal in this, right? So 10 years ago, I get fired for mocking rapists, and I get fired, called a homophobe, all that other stuff. A lot of the content that we did was not LGBTQ friendly for sure, but we thought we had license to do that because we promoted LGBTQ rights all the time. Doesn't matter. Get it. Totally understand it. But after the whole thing happened, when you're called out and vilified by newspapers, when you're called out and vilified by MSM, who back then people thought, well, that's the truth. Now we know it's different. It's not the truth. It is a tax that I don't think anybody understands how much it really costs, right?
Yeah.
And so when I listen to that and I watch this gentleman cry his eyes out because his fan, he is about to go through some things that he's probably never been through, right?
Yeah.
Which is whether or not it's accurate and authentic, the assassination of his character and his reputation as a political advisor or a political dude, loss of income, loss of money. And I'll tell you something, in the Asian culture, and I know this because I've got some friends that do talk about this, in the Asian culture, as Michelle has pointed out, shame and dishonor are just like murder. Like it's that
way up.
serious. It's at the top of the list in certain cultures in the Far East. And dude, that is culture. That's how they've lived. So
they'd rather kill themselves. At least that's the storyline. Than bring shame to their family, right? Yeah.
So like he knows. Like I think this is like, oh my God, I am about to go through the gauntlet. I'm going to be the top of the news cycle. People are going to call me a traitor when I go to No Frills, right? Like that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about the real life application of the damage that this story, whether it's true or not, and it'll bear out. I hope it bears out. The story, whether or not it's true, run with zero implications for the people that are actually putting this story out. An informant from CSIS, and that is a fucking no-no in CSIS. CSIS is livid, by the way, at this gentleman who's whistleblowing. However, to that point, if this stuff is true, I'm not unhappy that we know, and we need to deal with it across the board, not just here with this gentleman, but we need to fucking take the top off this thing, put our hands in it, pull it out, put it on the table, and pull the whole thing apart in front of Canadians because we deserve it, man.
Well,
we deserve it. I want to know when I vote for somebody that I don't have some guy in the Chinese consulate in Toronto going, let's cook this over here. Bring a busload of people over there. Let's figure this out. Because Canadian elections are Canadian elections. But, dude, this has been happening for a long fucking time.
I think one of the fundamental problems is that, and you've heard this expression in politics all the time, is nobody wants to see how the sausage gets made. And I don't disagree with that, because having written policy for political parties and having been involved in some of the conversations that happen there and having seen some of the compromises that have to get made, making the sausage is not a pleasant experience. But here's what the problem is. It's not sausage anymore. That's not what's being sold to Canadians or Albertans. I'm a little biased, but
it's our elections.
They're not making sausage anymore. I don't know.
I thought you were going to make a caucus joke again.
I was game for it too. Not a bad deal.
No, they're not making sausage anymore. They pretend that they're making sausage, and they're like, you don't want to see how the sausage is made. But while they're doing that, they're pumping something else through that meat grinder.
Yeah.
And what they're feeding to Canadians is corruption.
Chewing it up.
It's dishonesty, it's power brokering, it's corporate interests, it's a whole bunch of other different things, but it sure as hell ain't sausage anymore. And that's the conversation that I think that we need to have.
And it works. And here's the thing that I'm hoping we get to a point, or at least we start to make some headway on. And I'm glad we jumped into this. I was actually surprised that we were going to talk about this today on this podcast. Here's the problem I have with where we're at politically. And this is, everybody needs to look deep inside themselves for this. And I'm being serious. When we start having conversations like this about one side or the other, and about corruption or whatever the case might be, about Dong and whatever his issues are with the consulate, whatever that story ends up being, if we get we have to stop doing but look at what the other side does. And unfortunately, that's the biggest issue I have right now with politics, because I will go on my radio show and I will make an anti-liberal comment, and I will have somebody literally text the show and go, but what about that guy? And then I'll go on the next hour and I'll make a Trump comment. It's not even fucking Canadian. And then I'll have somebody go, yeah, but Biden's a tool and he's wearing a diaper. I mean, we are living in a world of but politics in this country.
Comparison.
It drives me absolutely insane.
You can't have a fucking conversation based on merits with anybody anymore,
you
because when you point something out, like if you point out a clear lie that Pierre Poilievre tells about inflation belonging to the Liberals, it's a fucking global issue, and Canada leads in the lowest inflation in G7 nations. When you point out that that's a lie with a fact, you get a picture of Justin Trudeau in blackface.
Yep, exactly. What does that have to do with the comment that you just made?
Zero. And it never will. We live in a society where people are like, oh, yeah, you hurt me and you told the truth. So what they do is they go to character assassination, which plays into this conversation here. The interesting part of this equation, and I'm not saying Han Dong is innocent or guilty, but do you know the name of the person that he beat in that riding for that seat about 2 years ago? Do you guys know the name? I do. Her name's Sarah Fisher. Do you know who Sarah Fisher is?
Oh, is she the box for?
She is the comms director for the Conservative Party of Canada.
She's the one who did the box of water thing. It doesn't work.
Yeah. The ailse.
That's right. Okay, I know her.
Yeah. So, like, I don't doubt that there's guilt in terms of influence, but I mean, there is a lot of other fucking meals that we're cooking here on the same stove that I would like to add to the ratatouille, which we're talking about right now, which is let's fucking suss all this stuff out, right? We get lied to daily. We get lied
by
to
everybody.
daily. By everybody. So what
you lied to me before this podcast.
I'm lying to you right now, actually. Yep. I'm not even telling you what I'm lying to you about. But my point is this, is that you as individuals need to step back, right? These are moments where we need to step back as Canadians, not as Liberals, not as Conservatives. And I watched people from the other side agree with me all day long today on Twitter. And I'm like, we've tapped into something pretty incredible. We should be asking for an unbiased look, no rose-colored glasses, no politically rose-colored glasses, at exactly what's going on here. Exactly what's going on. We're not going to get it.
And take the party out of it.
Yeah.
And take the buts out of it.
Yeah.
And have a look at it.
Let's all get together. Let's be friends and figure this out. You, me, all of us, liberal, conservative, NDP, commie, not fascist. It doesn't matter. Let's all fucking figure this out together. What is going on in this country and how do we fix it? Sorry, Nate, didn't mean to interrupt you with my big mouth.
Not at all. I was just going to say, like, one of the things that I find absolutely fascinating is the team mentality. I've never been great with team sports. It's just not my jam because I have to have the autonomy to say, well, I think that this might be bullshit regardless of whose team it's on. And one of the things that's fascinating to me is that there is a greater adherence to team than there is to the actual ethics, morals, ideology that those teams claim to hold. Like, I don't know if I'll try for a sports metaphor here, so bear with me because this is not my jam.
Need some help? I can do that. I'm
Probably
a fucking sports metaphor guy. What are you trying to do? Where are you going? Tell me.
So here's what I'm trying to say. You got two teams into it for me. You got two teams. They're playing in that Stanley Cup thing. One of them wins, the other one loses. Like how I did that for you there?
You are terrible at this. Go ahead. Yeah.
One of them wins, the other one loses. If somebody looks at the winning team and says, your defense was garbage. Sorry, the losing team, and says, I told you I was bad at this. Somebody looks at the losing team and says, your defense was garbage. If that losing team turns around and says, yeah, but the winning team, they had this other thing, so let's not talk about our defense being garbage. We're just going to come back next year and do everything exactly the same. But this time we might just cross our fingers a little bit harder. You're not going to solve the actual problems.
Mm-hmm.
And
great point. That's actually a good sports analogy, right? Where you're like, hey, we don't need to focus on the things that we did. Yeah, you did it. You nailed it after you got there. But in terms of like trying to understand what you're saying is like everybody looks at whatever they need to look at. They'll tell you whatever you need to hear about why things are the way they are, but they will never include their part, right? Never. And in politics, no one ever does. The goal here is
the ability to take responsibility for things.
Zero accountability. And when fucking we get to that point where someone says to you or me, and I live by accountability. If I fucked up, I want to be right. I don't. I blame politics. And religion, by the way, because religion is a lie. They live it every day and they tell people to do the same thing. But my point is that There's no trust left anymore because no one's willing to be accountable. And that's a fucking great analogy. You nailed it. That Stanley Cup thing. Loved it. Way to go. I'm not going to bring you on our fucking, when we start doing playoff podcasts, I'm not bringing you on the show for those.
That's probably wise, because I'll be like, I bet that guy makes a lot of money.
Just so you know,
that guy makes a lot of money too. There's like 10 guys skating around there. I bet they all make a lot of money. That would be my commentary.
Good. Thanks. I'm glad
I just gave a stroke.
Yeah, you think you
yeah.
did too.
I do love your work. I think Dean's trying to be nice because it's towards the end of the podcast and he wants you to leave feeling good about yourself. But that was a horrible sports analogy.
It was actually good. I thought it was really good. Thought he did a great job. And you know what? He prefaced it by saying he's going to fuck it up. So the fact that he didn't really totally fuck it up is a fucking huge win.
It's all about managing expectations.
He Chris rocked
Absolutely. It. Okay, we're going to finish with a sports story then because you're so sportsy.
I know where we're going with this. You're not going to be happy with my take on this one.
Okay. That's why I love it. It's a potpourri of takes.
There we go. Okay.
All the different pieces come together to make a nice vanilla lavender scent.
What's the sports story?
Have you heard the rumors about Andrew Wiggins?
I read this.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad I'm sticking around for this.
So Andrew Wiggins, NBA player. Here he is with his wife. You know who Andrew Wiggins is. Canadian. Went first overall in the draft about 7-8 years ago. Largely.
He was in New York first.
Is that hockey?
He got drafted by I think he got drafted by the Cavs, and then he got traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and then he's kind of been around.
I thought he was in New York first.
No, this is all hockey, right?
No, this is NBA. This is NBA. This is,
Stop
Here we go.
Mate.
Andrew Wiggins, NBA, Golden State Warriors.
Look at all the pads on him.
So, anyway.
Cross then. Sorry, my bad.
He plays for Golden State, won a championship last year with him. Kind of a nice story because he's had a real weird career. He's an anti-vaxxer as well. Didn't want to get vaccinated, begrudgingly did so he could play with the team. Had a tough
he's religious.
You think you might be correct. Let's leave that out of it because he's having a tough fucking month. He has not played in 17 games, which is close to a month. Actually, just over a month. Citing family matters. People have started to ask questions. Rumors are starting to come around. The one rumor that is extremely loud, almost as if it is fact, is very interesting. Here it is. Apparently, Andrew Wiggins, $100 million NBA player, found out his girlfriend just got exposed to sleeping with his best friend, and Andrew's been taking care of at least one of the children that wasn't his with his wife. So over the past several years, Andrew Wiggins has been playing basketball, his best friend, and you got to know how professional athletes work. They have guys, right? They have guys that heat up their car before they get to it. They got guys that get their medication. They got guys that go shopping for them. They got guys, right? Everybody does. Like the famous story, I don't know if you've heard of Shaq, who had a guy that used to get paid $100,000 a year to make sure his car was pulled up, the music was set to 4, and the right song was playing, so he could just get in the car and he could go to the.
No way, really?
Yeah. NBA players especially have guys.
Snoop's got a guy that rolls joints for him.
Oh yeah,
he makes like $150,000 a year.
Yeah, they like rich athletes and celebrities have guys, girls, people, right? Yeah. One of Andrew's people was his best friend from university in high school. And he's been banging his wife.
How do we know this, though, Dean?
Well,
there's speculation.
We don't.
Allegedly.
The pictures are interesting because his kids look nothing like him or his wife. Like nothing. And so Andrew, this is called a family matter, has been dealing with this for 17 games, trying to figure out, oh my God, this is a rumor, not totally true. Although Draymond Green basically kind of said it was true in a video where he's like, stop sniffing around for information. Leave the guy alone. How can we? This is one of the biggest stories in the fucking world. And everybody's going, oh my God, if that's true. Is it a nightmare or is it a get out of family jail free card? If indeed this is true. Nate Pike, the Breakdown AB. Over to you first.
Well, let me start with the sports analogy. No, in all seriousness, this is I would put this firmly in the nightmare category, and I think that the biggest group. I mean, it sucks to be that guy for sure, and but you know, I think it really, really sucks to be the kids. And this is where sort of I get concerned because if he's
that
raised,
one kind of looks a little like him, no?
if he's raised these kids as his own to whatever age they are, then he's I would hope, he said cautiously, has invested a lot of caring, a lot of love, a lot of time into these kids. And I don't know if that, I mean, are the metaphor that I would probably use is that at this point, in effect, they're his adopted kids. I think that if he just walks away, then and he uses the get out of jail free card or whatever, I think he might be a dick. And I say that because these kids, he's their dad. That's who he is to these kids. And if he decides, I get that he's hurt and it's complicated and there's probably going to be a whole lot of anger and I wouldn't want to navigate that shit show. You couldn't pay me enough. But the reality is based on those pictures that you just showed, there's two kids that have lost the person or stand to potentially lose the person who is their father to them. And I mean, it's not the kid's fault. There we go. I think that's really, really important to that's where I would start from with it. If he wants to never have anything to do with her again, totally get that. Totally justified in that. But I don't think, like, you got to think about the kids in this because they're the biggest victims in all of this.
Locke.
Okay, so I come from this from a very interesting perspective because my mom was 16 when she had me. My dad was 18. Young. And I believe, no one has ever told me, but I believe that my grandfather may have taken my father behind the shed and said, "You're going to marry my daughter. So figure it out." And then that happened. And then 8 years later, my grandfather passed away and my dad took off. Now, listen, I don't know if those two were connected in any way, but I look at this from the perspective of there is always going to be complications in any family, under any roof, no matter what. You have some really weird situations out there. And it takes, if you're not the type of, this is my thoughts on it. If you're not the type of person, and maybe Wiggins isn't, where he can figure this out and make it work, then he's got to get out of there because he's just going to cause a major problem for everybody. And I don't know what that looks like, but that's what I think he's got to work through. But maybe he can look at, what's the guy that has like 10 wives and 50 kids and he was on America's Got Talent, and the guy that, what's his name? He's knocking up girls like crazy. He makes that work.
Oh, Nick Cannon.
Nick Cannon. Like, I don't know. Like, that guy's unbelievable.
Literally none of those examples play here, though. Like, you're talking about a dude who was married to a lady who had 3 kids. 2 for sure. 2 maybe. 1 for sure is not his.
Okay.
She lied to him about it the whole time.
But
and
I'm just
if
saying,
the rumor's true, and he found out that she lied to him, and his best friend, who he counted on, is the father. If that's the case, how do you raise another person's child?
I'm just saying,
when you were tricked into it in the first place. In my mind, both of you guys are wrong.
Yeah, well, that's why I wanted to jump in front of this, because you're going to say something awful right now.
Well, it's physically. Would it not be physically impossible for you guys?
No,
to be able to rate. Dude, I have a friend of mine. His name's Phil Clausen. He'll go nameless. Phil Clausen. He marries a lady. They have kids. The first child that they have, great, looks nothing like the second or the third. 10 years into their marriage, he's got 3 kids. 2 are his. Finds out that 1 isn't his. Deep Six is her with the other kid. The other 2 come and live with him. And it ripped apart the family. However, she went about her business. But dude, like, you're talking, that is the ultimate betrayal in my mind. What happened to Andrew Wiggins.
I'm not disagreeing, Dean. What I said was
get out of fucking family jail free card. No alimony, no child support. Let's look at the fucking glass half full for Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah. Where I disagree with Nate is that the kids don't come first. You have to figure out whether or not you can live with whatever it is you're dealing with, right? Like there's guys, I have a friend of mine that I went to high school with who texted me yesterday and told me he's driving through, and him and his wife, they have a life that I could not wrap my head around. They're into polygamy and not polyamorous. They're polyamorous. Polygamy is different. That's another thing. So like he'll go to the door, bang, 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 and Jerry will be there to pick up his wife and take her out on the town and possibly sleep with her that night. And then he has a girlfriend, and they've figured it out. They've made it work. They have kids in this thing, and there's lots of crazy environments out there.
Hold it though, but they told each other they were into it, and they gave each other those licenses.
But that's what I'm saying. Wiggins has to figure out if he can make this work for him, and if he can't, then he's got to get the hell out of there. And Nate, you're right. It is about the kids, but ultimately, you got to protect the kids. I know if that happened to me, I would be such a miserable bastard. I would make everybody's life around me miserable, including the kids, including the woman involved, and I would just be a nightmare to deal with.
I'm not by any
remove your
saying that he should stay with her. That's not my argument at all.
Oh, okay.
No. But I mean, my personal values, my personal beliefs says to me that there's got to be some way that these kids
still love those kids.
What's that?
Yeah, still love those kids is basically what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if he held those kids after they were born, and he believed that those were his children, and he invested all, I would be more scared. I'll be honest with you. I would be more scared of the person who's able to raise those kids from birth and just walk away from them. That to me is a level of indifference that I just don't even know.
I bet you that's more of the common route, though, Nate, to be honest with you. I would do little things like stay in touch with them, but I would give mine like a car when they were 16 and the other one not. Just
he didn't do anything to you. Why is
a little digs to show that?
Yeah,
if
they all live together, I would give my kids 3 Oreos and that guy's kids 1.
Yeah,
I can't. I don't want to ever be that cold.
I don't either. Someone asked me in the comment section, Linda. She's like, and I thought this was a great question. She goes, "Okay, Dean Blundell, you find out tonight your kids aren't yours. What do you do?" Interesting question. They're 17, 19, and 23.
You'd be packing their shit up right now.
It'd be out front of the house.
Would. I don't think he would.
Their shit would be on the doorstep, and I'd call her and I'd say, "You got some things to pick up. Yeah, you're gonna have to come pick up.
Start the Corolla.
You gotta come get your bastards." No, I wouldn't say that. I would never say that.
This is what I'm saying.
I would continue to be involved in their lives, and I would be ruined, right? Like that's 23 years of my life, and they're my purpose. So if they're Andrew's purpose, to your point, a good man will try and he'll take 17 games off of an NBA schedule. He'll give that money back, and he is giving that money back to figure out what is in the best interest for those kids, number one.
Yeah.
And fuck the wife. Forget her. Get her out. Do what is legally and operationally in the best interest of those kids, because someone who lies to you about your children not being yours for years is unsafe as a parent, and you should not be around. So in my mind, Andrew Wiggins should be doing everything he can, no matter whose kids those are, or if one or two or both belong to his best friend and his now ex-wife. He should be doing what's in their best interest to set them up so that they're okay, and he should do everything in his best interest to penalize her through the process.
And I mean, here's the other thing I'll say. If we're talking about people who have like money to pay people to start their cars and queue up their music, I mean, a
You
college
should
fund
expect those guys to bang their wives. Thank you,
college-
Nate. That's a great way to
college
end.
fund isn't out of reach. Supporting these kids is not out of reach. Is all I'm
I knew you would get ugly. I knew
That's
you'd
not what
come
he
down
said.
the path, Nate. I knew it.
No,
Just
but you bring it like if we pivot from that
with
point a
your
little
wife,
bit.
Nate,
If we
say it.
pivot from that point a little bit, a guy who is not home has guys who do the stuff he should be doing. It's
Expect
kind of
it.
understandable that his wife banged his best
I
friend.
didn't say that. I did not say that.
Nate, I understand where you're coming from on that. I totally appreciate that point of view.
That's not what he said. We're totally appropriating what he said. What he said was totally the opposite of we're suggesting here, which is like bad. We just sewered him. Sorry, dude.
Join
You never
the
coming
swamp.
back.
It's good swimming over here.
What was it that I said the very first time that I came on?
I hate Lachlan Cross. I don't remember.
No.
Something like that.
But it was like, did you
That was after
ask
that.
this guy to like foil me? Was there a conversation that happened before I came on where it was going to
No, never.
guy's
I
gonna
had
be
no
the-
idea who you were, but I like you. And the more I
love
get to
him.
know you, I fucking start to like you even more.
Yeah. Nate, appreciate you being here, dude. As always, The Breakdown is a tremendous podcast. Please go and download, subscribe anywhere you find podcasts. Go to crier.co. He's in the personality section and the podcast section. Keeping an eye on Alberta and as centrist as you can find. You know what I like about Nate? And I'm not going to give people the details, and I'll just tell people a little story about you and me.
The sports analogies.
No, you know how this is why I fucking love this guy.
The Stanley Cup thing. That's what.
Yeah. Imagine the Stanley Cup thingy. No, this is why I love him. So Nate calls, sends me a note the other day. He goes, can we talk about something? I go, sure. So he phones me and he's like, I'm getting some interesting notes from people about you. I just wanted to talk to you about them. And I'm like, sure. So we sit and talk and have a fucking marvelous conversation. Marvelous. We meet in this incredible middle where he's like, that makes sense. I'm like, good, makes sense to me. This is how that should be done, as opposed to people saying, oh, I heard some things, so I'm just going to block that guy, not going to work with him. Because we operate in a world where he and I get a ton of DMs from people who are like, you should stop working with that person. You should, like, our clients all get peppered with that stuff. And I want to tell you, Nate, this publicly in front of everybody. You are the first person, right, that's been on the receiving end of those, that has picked up the phone and said, hey, I just wanted to talk about these things and kind of clear a few things up before, anybody makes any rash decisions here. That is the centrist that is Nate Pike. That is the individual, the measured response, the unbiased individual who I had an hour-long conversation with yesterday about why we do what we do. We do what we do so that we can encourage people to talk, give information, and listen. And if we're not going to be those people in private, we can't be those people in public. Nate is this person in private, and he is not duplicitous. And I would highly encourage you to follow him on Twitter at The Breakdown AB, at Nate Pike as well. And wherever you can find him on with his podcast, go and download. He is tremendous. He calls spades. Dude, I think you're wonderful. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
I want to add one thing before I go. I'm going to leave. I want you to say nice things about me while I'm gone. Okay, thank you.
You just left. Lachlan Cross. Yeah, appreciate you being here, buddy.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Talk to you soon. The Breakdown AB. Go and subscribe to the podcast at The Breakdown AB on Twitter. Give him a follow, too. It's great. Great guy. Centrist. Normal. Peace out, Locke. Thanks, everybody, for being here. We really appreciate it. As always, brought to you by some incredible people and brands, not limited to or exclusive to Cantork out of Edmonton, Alberta. These are a good group of people. Not only do they make Canada's best assembly tools, they make torque wrenches for every individual application you can find. If you can't find an application for a torque wrench, these guys will make it for you. They do business around the world. They are manufacturers of the most hardworking, rugged, beautiful torque wrenches in the industry. If it's a bolting project, fastening, loosening project, and you need a torque wrench they don't make, if it's in nuclear, if it's in railroad, if it's in heavy machinery, doesn't matter what it is, you need to get in touch with my friend Colin Livingston, the principal at Cantork. Wonderful guy. Races with Alex Tagliani, by the way. Check out his racing posts. He's ready to race like right now. And he's traveling all summer, but this gentleman just gets solutions for people in that heavy machinery industry. No matter the scale of your bolting project, they have it. They got your solution. Go to cantork.com today for more information. Also, our friends over at Ed's Fine Imports. We're brought to you by Gitch, engineered for any level of performance underwear that's good for your everyday life, no matter the application, designed with your movement in mind. The best performance, so you can run, walk, sprint, or just sleep your way through the day. Super soft, barely there comfort. Buy 3 of these things. He'll send you a free pair when you order Gitch 3 and you check out at edsfineimports.com. He's got a massive online selection. Luxury boxer briefs. Gitch, engineered with you in mind. Go and buy some today, and he'll send you a free pair. Gitch 3 is your promo code. And last but not least, our friends at Kivlaw Defense Attorneys. They want to speak to you if you want to speak to them. You can't have a legal issue and not deal with it, or have the very best in your area be able to defend you, explain how this whole thing works, and help you get your life back. Criminal defense law by Southern Ontario's best in St. Catharines. They'll do anything from impaired, assault, white-collar crimes, litigation, wrongful arrest, any offense. They've got you covered. And he knows you need honesty. He knows you need someone to get back to you. He's available 24/7. Robert@kivlaw.ca. Again, Robert@kivlaw.ca. Check him out today. That's it for us. Have a great day, everybody. Be careful what you read. It's my advice for you today as you go about your merry way. Be careful who you believe. And I'm not saying it's conspiracy theory, the world's out to get us. But in the game that you are playing, and everybody's playing here, trying to figure out what's truth and what isn't, the one thing this whole China versus Canada thing has kind of taught me, and it's kind of been reinforced over time, is that mainstream media outlets in Canada want you to believe the narrative they give you. They don't give you news. They're affirmation, not information. They're into affirmation of culture, affirmation of opinion and narratives that are convenient to them. Bell, Rogers, Post Media, every media in this company is attached to free enterprise and your political institutions. So that's who they serve. They don't serve you. Remember that all the time. And step away from your bias. It's important to do that in times of national security risk like we're going through right now. Ugh. Fight for the truth. Fight for your neighbors. Fight for yourself. Don't fight for them. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. We have Mel from the Dark Side of the Grill, Bert Kreischer's personal barbecue guy. He's going to join us tomorrow. Yeah. See you then. 4:00. Bye.